Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2, Ryunosuke Resolve. This is Vita Fuser in our last episode. We cornered Judge Jigoku as the one who killed Tobias Gregson. But we're not done yet. Oh no. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such a vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. Yes. An exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassination exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us. Enough! I've already told you, I cannot say. Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Guilty. Seishiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found guilty. And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court. Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond all doubt. Oh, wonderful! Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, thank you. Is something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey, and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, I bet you do. Insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we've reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. As a prosecutor. As you wish, now for the formal adjudication. I hereby declare the defendant, Barak von Zeeks.
Objection!
What is it now, Asogi? The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel? The accused innocence hasn't been fully established at all. And therefore, it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? But Judge Jigoku's already confessed. Nevertheless, Barak von Zeeks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was carried out by Seishiro Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony he was coerced into complying with the plot. Into this sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is, who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. And we've already established the Reaper himself. Well, certainly. That would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barak Van Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm gonna prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. What? What? Order! 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 The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build your case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim he's the Reaper. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper, which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention there. I must say, I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You're guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Oh boy. Very well. Whilst it's extremely irregular, I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all information he has had with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding this court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. Pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verify that this vile and unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice. Lord Van Zieks, I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now, and ever since that time, I've endured the weight of the implied guilt that's gone with it, along with the pain of my hand. So I welcome the chance to testify now, and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. Putting the defense in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous, and Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment, he's not thinking logically. You're right that he's not himself, but I knew it would be like this, and I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise, as a lawyer and as his friend. And that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Very well, defendant. You will take the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. As you wish, my lord. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. wouldn't say that. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution? Both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey, and that you masterminded the assassin exchange. I acknowledge that the public at large believes me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just by the given by the accused to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo? Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? You asked me to be here. A desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony. I know where it is. Alrighty. No point going or beating around the bush. What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, is this 10 years old? From the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks. What? My brother's autopsy report? I'm pleased to see the defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in the court! What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again. The professor. I personally researched all the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zieks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that it was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zieks here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. Did it, though? How do we know it's legal evidence? A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death. That's outrageous! And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain, using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. Order! Order at once! 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer, to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself I proved it, that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Jeez, how much glass is in your hand? Ouch. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the courtroom is heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Shishiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence, and he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in the autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword Karuma before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Sogi's young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing? Is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to the questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth. That's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So you admit then, the evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated? It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak! I'm not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it. That's right. Even then. So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. If the results of Clint Van Zeek's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barak Van Zeeks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize the exchange of assassins. Exactly, as was established earlier. But that doesn't make any sense. He wasn't the original person in charge of the case. It has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with the Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barak Van Zeeks. Now.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi. What? Well, you've just told the court absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission. In that case, I know. The name of the Reaper. What? Lord Van Zeeks? I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. If Lord Van Zeeks isn't the one behind this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. And we know him very, very well. I just had a feeling his name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is... You guys have been waiting for this long, long time. It's time for us to formally accuse a judge. Male Strongheart, the only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results, is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Male Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court, but he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zeeks, had been killed. I can only assume this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zeeks, 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to revenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now. I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world. By Seshiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it's no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. No. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zeek's autopsy. That's utterly untrue.
Objection.
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now. Unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. Oh, that's funny. Wait a few more, about 100 or so years, then we'll be able to do that. You mean to say... I forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. No. Ah! Order in the court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder and the light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? I don't think so. So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. The court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections? Oh, we have an objection. He's waited his entire life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zeek's autopsy report. I didn't mean to do that! Ryunosuke, please! I'm sorry, Kazuma. Mr. Naruhodo, isn't there someone rather important whom you've overlooked? Yeah, there is, and I fumble-fingered it. Your silence is beautifully eloquent. I take it we've reached the end of this debate, then. Let the matter be closed for good.
Objection.
Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who, Ryunosuke? Who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please, this trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify at the autopsy of Clint Van Zeek's is Yujin Mikitoba.
Take that!
Heaven help us. Another Japanese. Shut up with your racism, idiot. An expert in forensic medicine, my lord, Professor Yujin Mikitoba, 16 years ago. He came to London with Seshiro Jigoku and Genshin Asogi as a visiting student. And what could his testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikitoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikitoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikitoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of emergency. Whatever happened in an autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense's demand is denied. What? But Professor Mikitoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him in the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So present your evidence for those claims, and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence, but that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. That was low, dude. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seshiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities.
Objection.
But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Sogi, you will be remanded following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. This futile game of revenge is over. Young Master Asogi. Will it be? We'll find out next time.